First, Caroline Russell, London Assembly member of the Green Party. Can I just say, we've been working with Caroline and her colleagues, Sean Berry and Zach Walensky, for years on this. They've been absolutely fantastic, and you're very welcome.
Thank you very much. So yes, I'm Caroline Russell. I'm an Islington councillor, and I am a London-wide London Assembly member for the Green Party. And thank you very much for inviting me to speak today, Simon. And I do want to just thank the tireless and fearless campaigners of Stop Silvertown and the whole coalition of people who have been battling this toxic tunnel for years, and being a voice for people on both sides of the river. Now, Sian and I were campaigning against Silvertown with Jenny Bates, who you heard from earlier, back in 2011 in the lead up to the 2012 mayoral election campaign. And I think, you know, we heard just now from all our previous speakers. I just want to pick out a few of the things they said. John talked about this as a dramatic public policy failure. Anna gave that devastating example of a patient who was living by a Blackpool tunnel vent, and as a medic, there was nothing she could do to help. And the cost to the NHS, £8,000 per car. And then we heard from Jenny about that whole history of what has happened in the past, the political history, and Ian with the very important points about exposure to PM2.5 particle pollution, and the fact that the levels of exposure that are deemed to be safe have been slashed by the World Health Organization down to 5 for PM2.5. We have to make sure that anything that is being built at the moment is being held to account by those new levels. Now, we know that however much we clean up tailpipe emissions, the tyre wear is what is devastating our health. During my last year chairing the Assembly Environment Committee, we heard from Ian Mudway about in much more detail than we've heard today, about the devastating health consequences of breathing PM2.5 particle pollution. And we learned that road transport is the single biggest source of PM2.5 pollution affecting children in schools across London. Roads campaigning is why I got into politics. I wanted to stop people being killed and injured on the road. But in 2011, I started to learn about air pollution and worked with others pushing for Johnson's original ultra-low emission zone to be made much bigger. And we've kept working with the current mayor to get that ultra-low emission zone to cover the whole of London, so no Londoners are left out. Now, we started with citizen science projects back in 2011, working with Mapping for Change, and actually sort of demonstrating to people that you can even measure the NO2 pollution in London. And since I was elected to the Assembly in 2016, working with grassroots campaigners like Mums for Lungs, we have been identifying some of the most polluted places in London. And we've come so far since 2016, when we used to watch the monitors, the air pollution monitors in Brixton and Putney High Street, to see which one was going to pop first for that year. These places would bust their annual NO2 pollution limits during January, and often during the first week of January, they would bust their annual pollution limits. So it is actually incredible the difference that has been made in terms of pollution over this last few years, in that those annual limits are not being bust anymore, and there is a growing awareness about the impact of pollution on our health, although not enough awareness about PM2.5 particle pollution. Now, tackling air pollution is one of the mayor's major targets, and it is very hard to understand why he is so insistent on building this toxic road tunnel that will just create more pollution. He knows the health dangers it's going to generate, and yet this £2.5 billion project is named only once in passing in his environment strategy. It's the single largest investment project in Transport for London right now, and it's going to change the lives of Londoners. So it is really hard to see why there is no discussion about it. Slightly worried, you may be worried about what we may find out if we actually start modelling the health impacts of it. Now, the London Assembly is a scrutiny body. It exists to hold the mayor to account, and that crucial power that we hold is one of those crucial powers we hold is the right to amend the mayor's budget. Now, Simon talked about Assembly members earlier. It was Green Assembly members who exercised this right in January this year. I brought a budget-related motion to the Assembly calling on the mayor to provide an estimate of the cost of immediately cancelling the Silvertown Tunnel. Now, the motion passed, but the mayor tried to run and hide behind his contracts, claiming it was the costs aren't fixed, it's all commercially sensitive. But he gave us enough information to go on and estimate the cost of cancelling Silvertown, and we got that estimate as £500 million. So then we made a fully funded Silvertown Tunnel cancellation plan. We got it approved by the GLA finance team as part of the budget process as legally and financially viable. And we then put this legally and financially viable Silvertown Tunnel cancellation plan in our February amendment to the mayor's budget. Now, it wasn't passed by the Assembly, but it did prove to the mayor, to TfL, and to the world that cancelling the project is a real possibility. It is possible to do it. Now, this week, my Green colleague, Sian Berry, brought forward a motion to the Transport Plenary calling for transparency about what would happen if, for whatever reason, new mayor or whatever, traffic was to increase after the build. People need to know the effect such a huge and expensive, potentially harmful project would have on them. TfL is saying nobody's even asked them to do this kind of modelling. The mayor hasn't asked for that kind of modelling. Surprisingly, even the Tories supported Sian's motion, which meant it passed despite all the Labour Assembly members voting against it. So you want to know what to do to campaign on this, you need to influence those Labour Assembly members, because they were the ones that did not vote for the motion, which was Sian's motion this week, which was calling for more transparency, more information, more modelling. They're not all the levers we can pull. There have been 10 consultations that mention Silvertown, but never a consultation on Silvertown itself. So we still don't have that transparency that everyone in this room, everyone across London has been demanding for years. Now, Sian's motion this week was the second time something about Silvertown has passed in the Assembly, and that continued build-up of pressure from us on the Assembly and from all of you as campaigners all over London is building to be a tsunami of calls that just cannot be ignored. And Simon said earlier, until those tunnel boring machines go in the ground, this project can be stopped. So just make sure you have get your voices heard, get your voices out there, write to your Labour Assembly members, write to the Mayor of London, support the letter that Victoria is going to be talking about, I think, in this session, and just remember, we can protect Londoners' health, we can stop this tunnel. Thank you.
We have Magella Anning, Labour councillor in Greenwich and also a long-term campaigner against the tunnel. Please come and stand on the magic spot.
I've been involved with the Silvertown Tunnel campaign for some years. I've just recently been elected as a Labour councillor in Greenwich Creekside. And I'm very proud of this occasion today because both in person here and online, we have many councillors, Labour councillors from Greenwich present. We have 6 councillors here present in person and we have many more online. One of our councillors is the deputy leader of the council, Council Avril Lacau, who is responsible for environment. So she's very welcome here, and I'm very pleased to see her. We have, as I say, many other councillors joining us online. I have a message from one councillor, Labor councillor, Councillor John Fahy, who could not join us, and he says the following: "It is a matter of profound regret that the Silvertown Tunnel has not been cancelled. The overwhelming evidence recognises the impact on the health of Londoners. You cannot be an advocate for residents while at the same time supporting the development of the tunnel. The priority must focus on investing in public transport, not reducing services. The challenges are clear, the evidence overwhelming. Time to stop this project." We've heard today, earlier from health experts, about the costs to residents' health from air pollution every year. We hear a lot about the cost of cancelling the tunnel, but we don't hear policymakers talk enough about how much it's going to cost our residents over the next years, over the next decades. As far as what politicians and policymakers can do, I think we need to understand that politics changes quickly. We can change the narrative quickly. And in this narrative, we have to do it quickly. And from my point of view, this is not about Labour. This is not about the Greens. This is not about the Liberal Democrats or the Tories. This is about children's lungs. Let us be clear. This is about the health of the lungs of our future generations. And I do not want in 10 or 15 years' time to think of those parents sitting up all night with their asthmatic child, or sitting beside a hospital bed with their asthmatic child with an oxygen mask on them. The distress that parents and grandparents feel, I know what it's like because I am an asthmatic, and I have seen my parents and the distress on their faces when I was in intensive care as a child. So I know what it's like, and we should never, ever let politics get in the way of dealing with that issue. That is the issue, not political parties, not where we stand, not where we are competitive. It is the health of our children and the future generations. So everything we do from now on must be targeted at that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Magella. And the next is Shaban Mohammed. He's the lead cabinet member for housing and ward councillor for Canning Town North. Very, very pleased to have you here from Newham Council on the Magic Square. There we are.
Hi everyone, my name's Councillor Shaban Mohammed. I'm councillor for Canning Town North Ward, and myself and fellow ward members have been opposed to this tunnel since 2014. And since 2014, we were actively working with residents on the Greenwich side. And one person I would really owe a great debt to is one of our residents, Robbie Gordon, who's in the crowd today. And he gave evidence against the tunnel during the judicial review. Canning Town North is one of the most deprived wards in Newham. I was born in Canning Town North Ward. I grew up in the ward, and it's a ward I'm quite proud to represent. The tunnel will add to the other health problems that residents face in Canning Town. And I'm deeply disappointed that residents' voices have never been heard around air quality, which I think is a human right for everyone. During the regeneration of Canning Town, one of the things that did happen, they decided to remodel the flyover, the roundabout. And one of the things they've done during this remodelling is to actually put one of the roads going past a primary school. And who were the consultants? Arup. So, you know, you can imagine the sheer volume of traffic that is currently going through that slip road, and the sheer volume of pollutions that children are going to have to face. Our mayor must understand we cannot talk about air quality and decide to promote a tunnel that affects the most poorest and the most vulnerable in society. But who actually listens to the poorest and the most vulnerable in society today? Especially when those people are fighting to get out of social deprivation. The other thing I would like to highlight is about small businesses. And the majority of ethnic food warehouses are on this side of the river. So businesses from South London normally travel up the Blackwall Tunnel and use Spitalfields Market or other warehouses in the vicinity to supply their shops in the south of London. And I think, and you can imagine when we're talking about tolls, the effects it's going to have on small businesses, and especially today where we've got cost of living crisis and the food prices currently. I think one of the other things that we've got to look at is there's also talk of the Corporation of London centralising all their food markets. So you can imagine Billingsgate, Smithfield and Spitalfields, they're currently talking about centralising those and putting them in Dagenham. So again, you can imagine the sheer volume of traffic that is going to be going down the A13, using these tunnels. And again, you talk about infrastructure, no one's actually talked about the infrastructure of these roads and the congestion that it's going to cause. And one thing I would also like to add, we talk about England, we have a north and south divide, but I think in London, we have something called an east and west divide. Because if you look at it, the most deprived residents live in the east of London, and they seem to get rough-shotted and worse treated when it comes to these projects. So I think we've got to really look at that and understand it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I mean, I just have to pick up this point about Arup, because you mentioned Arup building a road by the primary school there. I came across Arup when we were researching the London climate and transport policy, and they were the ones who were taken on by C40 cities to do a supposedly independent assessment of London's climate policy, whereas of course they're working for the Greater London Authority. And I think Victoria may be able to tell us something about Arup as well. Right, so yeah, so the project manager for the scheme, just to say it again for the people online, moved over to Arup in the course of the preparation of the tunnel. So we keep coming across Arup, and I think that gives us a good idea of the sort of structures which are not only political but also economic that we're dealing with. Okay, Richard Flowers is next, chair of Tower Hamlets Liberal Democrats. He's been a candidate in GLA elections, and he's been working as part of this campaign to try to stop the tunnel. Richard.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me today and for showing such support for this really important project. Being part of this coalition is really the way forward. I'm Richard Flowers. I'm here today on behalf of Hina Bakara and Caroline Pigeon, who are our Lib Dem Assembly members who've been supporting work that the Greens have been doing. Caroline seconded the motion that Sean Berry put in this week. I'm sorry that I'm not here representing Rabina Khan as elected mayor of Tower Hamlets. Rabina has been a key campaigner in linking the effects of climate change to the concerns of minority communities, particularly the Bangladeshi community, who are a large part of Tower Hamlets' diverse population. But our opponents in Aspire ran a populist campaign that in part was opposed to low traffic neighbourhoods because they were able to present green as white and middle class. So we need Rabina and more people like her to break the idea that caring for the environment is something niche for the better off. And thank you to Mayor Rokhsana for speaking to this issue as well earlier. Lib Dems have a saying, think global and act local. Simon's introduction earlier touched on this very well, linking the effects of more traffic in Greenwich and Newham ultimately to the impact in India and Bangladesh. So it's great to be working together with people from other political parties and from none. The Liberal Democrats have a long record of standing with you against this tunnel. It was in our mayoral manifesto back in 2016 as well as last year's. And you'll know how often Caroline and now Hina have used questions to the mayor to challenge him on the pollution, the air monitoring, the traffic and the costs. So I've been here listening to the expert panel earlier and to Mayor Rokhsana from Newham and councillors from Newham and Greenwich, and of course Caroline from the Assembly, all about the politics. But I think the question I really still want to get an answer to is this: why are we digging this hole in the first place? The North Greenwich Peninsula was supposed to be the city of the future, building on the Millennium legacy with net zero homes. The East End already has some of the country's worst pollution. And the Labour mayor says he wants to reduce traffic. We have congestion zones and low emission zones and ultra low emission zones. Why are we still building a motorway under the river? You might be asking, why won't the mayor listen to us? And it's because he doesn't have to. We have a system for governing our capital city that gives all the power to one man, and yes, it keeps being a man, and expects him to just get on with it. He can hear from the vested interests, but he doesn't have to build a coalition or keep different groups on side or listen to the people. And now the Tories have made it even worse, just to make things easier for themselves. The next mayor won't even need a majority to avoid the second round runoff. So be angry about that. I'd say make a lot of noise, but the Tories have banned that too. But this is why we need to persuade more people to vote for parties that support reform of our politics, and particularly a proportional system of elections, to give a fair voice to everyone so that our leaders do have to listen. Coalitions actually give power to the people. So your coalition is an excellent example. We had a coalition that didn't work out so well, but it was built on 60% support from the country and brought ideas together. The point is that we are trying to say, what are the political solutions? Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? I'm saying we need to change the way we do politics overall. At the moment, the system has just an alternating swinging between Labour and Tories, and they don't actually have to present alternatives that apply to everybody. We want a better system. We want more power for the Assembly and less power all in one elected mayor. How did we get here? Well, we heard from Jenny earlier about the history of the project, starting with Ken Livingstone wanting to revitalise the East End by Keynesian big building projects, and that the bridge was cancelled by Boris, but the tunnel somehow survived, like a zombie project carrying on, like a supertanker, almost impossible to turn around. And like a supertanker, it's going to be full of petrol and spewing out shit, sorry. That zombie supertanker just keeps going because people don't have to listen to you. Modern cities like Amsterdam or Copenhagen, even Paris, make walking and cycling central to their urban infrastructure. We've heard ideas for doing that today. Forcing cyclists to share road space with lorries, buses and other vehicles, though, has turned London streets into a contest between couriers and cars, a clash where no one feels safe and littered with all too many victims. So we have to think bigger, make our whole city a living space, put the environment back into the urban environment, and make it one where walking and riding become the definition of freedom. Think about this. Better net zero housing, a mix of sizes to suit families at different stages, accessible for the elderly or the disabled, built in high density around urban parks, with places for the continental cafe-style lifestyle we were always promised, and safe separated cycle lanes to encourage family cycling. And we need to make public transport so cheap that it's just not worth having a car. That's how North Greenwich was supposed to be. That's what we were promised in the millennium. That's what it could be. Now, we have to work out how to get there.
Thanks very much, Richard. And last but definitely not least, Victoria Rance, the Scottish Silvertown Tunnel Coalition. They all know you already. So.
Thank you. I've got the hardest job now because I'm going to have to get you to focus. And so what we need, can we have the slide? Thank you. Okay, so what we wanted to have as an outcome for today is a letter. What do I do? Is that, oh, that's it. Okay. Is that okay? No, it's fine. I'm always being pushed into this one. So what we wanted as an outcome is to write a letter, which we're going to deliver by hand on Monday to City Hall with some demands. And these are the demands in the whale. So I'm just going to talk you through those and then ask for some feedback or any other suggestions. I've got one suggestion I wanted to add. So shall I read the letter out? Would that be good? Yeah. If you don't need me to read it out, I'd be very happy not to. So the letter starts with a review, asking for a pause and review. And then we're also asking for so far 3 things, possibly 4, that we want included in the review. It needs to be a meaningful review. So we want updated modelling, emissions and air pollution outcomes, including scenarios in which traffic reduction measures are not implemented or are unsuccessful, including for zero tolls, because we've shown that a future mayor is not legally bound to introduce tolls. Both Silvertown Tunnel Coalition and then Greenwich Council got advice showing that that any future mayor is not legally bound to introduce tolls. And in fact, it might be politically difficult to keep increasing them to effective levels. And as you heard from John Whitelegg, even if they become effective, they might be too effective and have to be reduced again. So they might be got rid of altogether. We need a new health impact assessment based on the new modelling, including the additional impacts on Black, Asian and ethnic minority communities and low-income families, with reference to the latest research on the health implications of air pollution and noise. As we've heard today, new research reveals just how harmful both are. Even with tolls, traffic into Newham through the Silvertown Tunnel will increase by up to 30%, because that is what the new tunnel can give, 30% extra traffic into Newham. And we also want a review of the project's compatibility with London's climate targets. As Simon has shown in his Stop Digging report, which is available here, you can't have both the tunnel and fulfill targets of reducing traffic by up to 40%, which is what the mayor says his target is. So if everybody agrees to that, then I'll just move on to one extra point. On Thursday, there was a debate, which you've heard about, in the London Assembly about the Silvertown Tunnel. A motion was presented by Sian Berry and Caroline Pidgeon, asking for modelling of traffic levels without any tolls, specifically. There was some confusion about whether this zero toll scenario would ever happen, even though both we and Greenwich, as I said, now have legal advice proving that it could. The leader of the City Hall Labour group said it would not, while adding who knows what could happen in the future. And I was thinking about what John described that the Welsh government have, which is the Commission for Future Generations. We do need to know about what happens in the future. We do need to control it. Her colleague modified this by saying it would not happen under this mayor. But Sadiq Khan cannot carry on being mayor for the next 100 years that the project lasts. So this is problematic. The toll is currently serving 2 purposes. 1, it is collected by TfL to pay for the scheme, and 2, it is a disincentive for using the tunnels. The mayor has committed to moving towards a road user charging scheme to be implemented in 2030, which is very welcome. But if road user charging were introduced, then the unfairness of charging for crossing the river in the east of London, but not the west, would become even more transparent, and calls for tolls could be scrapped because the protest will be even louder. If road user charging were introduced, then the annual payments for the Silvertown scheme could be paid for from that income, from road user charging income. So the imperative for tolls would be lost. If the tolls were scrapped or not managed effectively, then based on the usual effects of induced demand and the capacity of the tunnel, traffic could increase by up to 30% on those river crossings, as TfL admit. And this 30% rise in traffic would have negative effects on congestion, air quality, health and carbon emissions, as we've heard from our experts today. The Silvertown Tunnel scheme was given permission based on traffic not increasing, but now more than ever, we know it could by up to 30%. So I propose that we also need to know the risk of the zero toll scenario. We need an analysis of the risk of a future mayor removing tolls or not providing effective tolls. It has happened in other cities, and it is happening right now with other traffic reducing schemes in London, such as low traffic neighbourhoods and bus services. So I suggest we add as number 4, a full and independent analysis of the political and legal risks around the provision of the traffic reduction measures. Pierre, can we have the next slide, if you've got it? So those measures which are essential to maintain traffic at or below existing levels. But never mind. Do you want me to repeat that, or?
Yes,
Yeah.
there is no other slide.
Oh, there isn't. I did send it too late. Okay, so I'm suggesting number 4, a full and independent analysis of the political and legal risks around the provision of the traffic reduction measures, such as the tolls and new bus services that are essential to maintain traffic at or below existing levels. So this is all for our future generations, maybe not in 2026 when it opens, maybe 20 years, 50 years, but we still need to know what political outcomes could do to tolling. So now I'm handing over to you. Your responses and suggestions are welcome, but please can they be relevant and focused? And Simon is going to make sure of that. Thank you, Simon. Okay.
Thank you, Victoria. Okay, it's 20-something past 3. Our very patient and stubborn people online are still with us. I think the way to do this is this, but this is really for everybody to decide. I'm going to take somewhere between 6 and 8 people from the floor. I've got this on 2 minutes. I'm going to shut you up after 1 minute and 59 seconds. And we're then going to come back to our panelists once each, and then we're going to call it a day and go out in the sun, and we can carry on chatting there for as long as we like. Does that work? And going in the reverse order. So Richard, then Shaban, then Majella, then Caroline. Off you go.
Right, thank you. That gives me great time to. I'm going to just come back to what Miriam just said, because it's actually something I cut from my speech, which was that COVID did show us that there is a way we can change our way of living. And actually this connects with the idea that disaster capitalism is kind of coming to an end. We are at a tipping point now. I know you're going to think, oh, but he's the moderate liberal. Why is he saying that? We are reaching the end of the current thing that started with Mrs. Thatcher when she overturned everything. The next revolution, whatever it is, it's for us to shape. Now, that could be a citizen's income. That could be something that brings people more together. It could be any number. And I don't know what the answer is. If I did, I'd be up there preaching it. But yes, we have to take forward a change to our whole way of understanding that is coming, and is going to overthrow my party and all these other parties and bring something new. Good luck with what that is. Sorry. Pass that on.
Yeah, what I was going to actually say is politics is like cricket. You have to fight till the last ball, and I think this is what we're going to do with this tunnel. And I think it's people power that is actually going to make that change. And when I came into politics in 2018, it was growing up in a ward and absolutely seeing the life expectancy of people that I've grown up with, and you'll be very lucky that you see people of my age reach the age of 40 in Canning Town North Ward, because I think we suffer, really badly with the social deprivation and the generational deprivation that we have in that ward. And I think that was one of the main reasons I became a councillor in that ward. And I think people power is there to change things. And like I said, we are going to fight till the last ball is bowled and stop this tunnel. Thank you.
I don't think anything stops, even if they bore the tunnel. It will just get worse because people will see it. And suddenly, all the things that we've been saying will suddenly be visually available to everyone. And then the real trouble starts. So this is not going to go away. It's not going to be solved by putting it under the carpet or under the Thames. It's just going to get worse. And once the tunnel, if it's built, is in operation, people will look in horror at what is happening in our streets, and they'll say, whose fault is this?
I'm going to try and answer all of you. Robbie, I'll talk to you afterwards. Alex, I love the idea of the bridge that combines with the barrier, and it's so needed to have a way of walking and cycling across. Iqbal, great point about adding the cost, the cancelling cost against the health cost, and that really must go in the letter. Natalie, very good point about households, not families, more inclusive, definitely bringing in Ella's law. Possibly it should be CC the Assembly members rather than to the Assembly members, because it is the Mayor who has the power here. Raj, yes, thank you for raising Ella's law. Thank you for everything you're doing on the incinerator. I was the only Islington councillor to vote against the incinerator in Islington. I've spoken against it on many occasions. Fliss, the 18th, yes, everyone do what Fliss says, get out on the 18th. Ferdy, people don't know. We've all learned so much today. Take that knowledge to your friends, your neighbours. People need to know they are at more risk of air pollution sitting in their car than walking or cycling in the street alongside. Simon, capitalism, that is absolutely the problem. We have to absolutely change the way we are running our economy and making sure, just reducing inequality between those who have most and those who have least. Miriam, thank you. You did all the organising. Thank you for making this meeting happen. And no traffic. And you said together. So together, let's tell our friends and neighbours about the problems of air pollution. And I came in under 2 minutes. I've still got 4 seconds left.
Right, Victoria, how are we going to do this? Maybe come down to the Magic Square. Can you just summarise for us? I think we're pretty much going to agree by sort of acclamation with the points from Natalie, but if you could just run through so that everybody knows. And while you're gearing up for that, the practical point is that we're going to meet at City Hall, I believe. Somebody,
Sean Berry is going to be there.
Berry, another of the Green Assembly members, are going to come out there and meet us, and we will again contact the Mayor's office and see if anybody can spare 5 seconds to come down and talk to us. Don't hold your breath for that. But we'll be there at 1 o'clock on Monday, and you know, the more people who want to join us, the more noise we can make. Never mind the law on that, the better. So that's on. But then, what exactly we're going to take to them?
Well, what you saw on the screen, plus if everybody agrees, the thing about the legal and political impact, future impact assessment, which is like, looking into the future, but still very important.
Let's go through these one by one.
Okay.
So that was the one that you spoke about.
Yeah, that's what I spoke about.
Right.
Yeah. So if everybody agrees with that, that will go in.
Okay, hang on. Anybody disagreeing? Okay. No. Okay. So
okay.
We've got that one in. Yeah.
And then Iqbal asked if we could include a question or point out that the cost of cancellation should be put against the cost of loss of lives and the impact on our children.
Yeah. Should we can bring that in?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody agree with that? What about online? Can you see? Is anybody on? Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a comment is, can we not cost lives, financially? So, yeah. So Caroline, I think you've got a point. Cost of the health and service. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So.
So it's something like, Iqbal, would this cover your point? If we had a wording which said it's the cost in terms of lives and the cost of the health service, which cannot be measured in, in money, right?
Okay.
It's all right.
The actual economic impact of loss of life is significant. There's just slowly a should be the idea of
okay. Okay. Well, how about if I say compare the cost of cancellation against the cost to our health service of continuing with the scheme, and loss of lives cannot be measured in money, and that, you know, we want to just say that. Oh yeah, we'll refer to, yeah, I haven't got to that, yeah.
Hang on.
Oh yeah. Mm.
Right, this is where we're stuck with the hybrid format because I'm gonna take David, but can you take that over to him, and then we're gonna come back to Victoria and try and move on from this point. But it's just, if we don't have that, then we can't hear.
Who's
So,
speaking?
run over to David.
Can you put your hand up?
Thanks. I mean, I was just wondering, Simon, whether there's you know, I agree with all the individual points or most of them. I just wonder if there's a danger that the letter becomes too broad and too all-encompassing, and therefore and puts more and more in, whereas the original letter is actually very crisp and succinct and sends a clear message. And I just wonder whether it just, you know, we begin to actually reduce the overall impact by adding more and more in. And I just think we need to be mindful of that.
I think my phone comes back. Sorry, here we are, back in Zoom land. Yes, thanks. I think that you won't believe the amount that Victoria and I and others talked about that on email in the last few days. But I mean, at the same time, we're all here together. I think Iqbal's point is very valid. I think that Victoria's wording will bring that into the letter just in the introductory sort of paragraph without, you know, destroying the structure of the whole thing. But I take your point. I would ask you all, can we go with Victoria's wording? You know, it's not perfect and it's not long, but the advantage is that it's not long. Yeah. Okay. Right. That's that one.
And there was also a request to send it to Sadiq Khan and then CC all GLA members, which is something that we do anyway. We'll deliver it to Sadiq Khan. We'll send an email as well and send it to everybody.
Right.
Is that okay?
That's dealt with. Yeah. And then
yeah, and then the last
the
point for me was to put households, not families, which yes, I've already adjusted. Thank you.
Okay, is that it?
So that's as far as I'm just dealing with the things to do with the letter.
Yeah, that's
it.
I think that's it. I mean,
Yeah.
It's 5 to 4. I think, you know, I think our Zoom people have had enough, and so I'm going to end the formal part of this here.